Hi, everyone. Thanks for waiting. Today is Wednesday, March 5th. This is a workshop meeting that's primarily focused on the budget, but we do have some items of business. Under announcements, I just want to remind folks that no matter what the packaging says, flushable wipes do not break down. We had a massive clog at the edge of the system on Pearl Street over the weekend, and it was a wad of wipes. I'm sorry to be, being graphics, everybody gets my point. It was a wad of wipes the size of a mop head. So please, if you can, avoid the use of quote unquote flushable wipes. Sometimes you just got to talk about the practical stuff. Okay, next is opportunity to add or modify agenda item. We have a request from the water superintendent to add of approval for the annual inspection of the tanks at the water treatment plant and a repair that needs to be made in the tanks. And I'd like to put that at after the rec discussions. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And then
bills also.
oh, yes, I'm sorry. You do also need to add bills because we're able to get the bills done. So any objection to adding bills to the agenda? We'll put that after water treatment plant. Thank you for getting them done, everybody. Okay, so we have a return visit from Jewel Glenn Weintraub. I believe he's here. Is he not here yet?
Glenn was on. Did he? There he is. Weinberg. Sorry. I'll get it right.
Hi, Glenn. We have you first on the agenda. You have some follow-up presentation to make regarding the CCA. I will ask you, we have quite a bit of stuff on our agenda, and we have our first budget discussion tonight. So we've got 10 minutes tops. Are you there?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'll go really quick. That way there's time for questions if there are any. So last time I was here, we were awaiting bids from CCA electricity suppliers. We received those on February 19th. They came in about where we expected. They came in a little bit lower than on the renewable side, a little bit lower than the benchmarks that we had set. But if you recall, last time I was here, I said, we really would like to see about a 10%, discount off of those benchmarks to feel really comfortable going forward. The market just really like that week really started to drive up. A lot of this is a sort of a combination of weather forecasting, but really it's been a very acutely responsive to the tariffs on Canada. So we've seen this again this week once the tariffs were confirmed. We've seen the market head higher again this week pretty sharply because it's not just it's tariffs on Canadian natural gas and also on wholesale electricity, often hydro that comes from Canada. So the market is really reacting to the anticipation of those tariffs and what that might mean for electricity price going forward. So all that to say that it is quite a volatile market. It's quite a jumpy market, and it's not a great time to lock in going forward for long terms, like 24 or 36 months. However, and I mentioned this when I was here, but this is now sort of the immediate decision for the board, which is to consider a contract extension offered by Direct. So that would be between a 3 and 6 month extension. The precision, the details of this are sort of determined by where the market is at the time that we're ready to make a decision on this extension. And frankly, again, the market is so volatile that it's really difficult to tell whether or not this will be possible at that time. But nonetheless, we should prepare ourselves for that possibility because it is a good opportunity to protect consumers through the summer months, which tend to be some of the highest price and most volatile months of the year, and preserve a price which has not over the past several months performed particularly well against Central Hudson's rates, but is now performing much better against Central Hudson. And going forward, again, just based on what we're seeing in these markets, we would expect that the longer that we could preserve this rate into 2025 and maybe even through the end of 2025, that would be a really smart option to consider. So that's really the discussion for tonight. We are waiting for a final version of what that amendment would look like. It is a pretty short and straightforward amendment, but we're just waiting for a final version from Direct. But basically, all it will do would extend the current contract, the end date of the current contract, change the end date to a later date, and with no other changes, including price. So it's really very simple, like mechanically, legally, but we're just waiting for a final document for you to review and consider.
Well, I guess I have one question
Sure.
that right now it's hard to imagine the markets becoming more stable in 6 months, especially
Yeah.
around energy with everything that's happened, but that happens. I mean, it's like, the truism on the ground. All politics is local, right? I just like, what's the risk of, I realize you're not a financial advisor, but I guess a question to everybody is, how can we stomach taking the risk of it's 3 to 6 months worse?
And Glenn, is it right that our current price is higher than the bid that we got from Direct? Like it would already be am I looking at that right?
No, it's lower. So the price, the rates that we have now are lower than the bids that we got. In some cases, it's pretty close. For standard electricity, it was a wider gap. But yeah, this would be an increase. The bids that we got would represent an increase in the price. And again, just based on where the market was, we just didn't think we thought we were about 5% too high to really make a strong recommendation to go forward.
Thoughts from others? Any great insight, Aaron? You look like you have a big thought formulating.
No, it's more holding my head. So again, like if we do extend, we were subject to a cap, right, on rates last year. Would the cap go away, or would it still be in effect if we extend?
Well, it's not a cap as much as a fixed rate, so it can't go down or up, but it's fully fixed. So that's what we have now. We have 3 products. We have a standard rate, which is comparable to Central Hudson's non-renewable, though theirs is a monthly variable. The current rate for Central Hudson is 10.6 cents, whereas the CCA's conventional or standard pricing is 9.87, I believe. So it's a little bit lower. It's about a penny lower than where Central Hudson is. And then we've got a 50% renewable and a 100% renewable. And so for each of those, there's a step up in price. There's a premium on the renewables. But from that perspective, Central Hudson versus CCA, currently the CCA is about 7% lower.
Mm-hmm.
Glenn, if we have to make, and part of the CCA is that we're making decisions collectively with other municipalities. So can we make a decision to, like, does the whole group need to make the same decision to
No.
extend or not, or can we do it? So this is an individual municipality decision we could
Exactly.
decide independently to go ahead with the current price
That's
or,
right.
oh, wow.
That's right.
I was sort of looking for a little bit of that relief too, Laura. Any thoughts from you?
No, I mean, it's a gamble, right? So. And I don't have any faith that things are going to be better. But this is also not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
Otherwise I'd be really rich. So. I'm a little bit, stumped on this one, to
Your
be honest.
alternative is ending the agreement right now, right? Or at expiration, you're back to market rate.
Right.
Well, or we have, I mean, we have three
Or we
choices
could
then. We could end it, we could extend it, or we could choose the new rate.
Well, you don't have any rate yet, right?
No, we do, right, Glenn? We can choose the new, we can sign for this new rate and lock it in for 2 years.
That wasn't your rate.
Well, you could yeah, you could award, but it would be repriced. Like if you wanted to do that, it would be because the price that was as of February 19th. So it would be repriced, as of the date that you'd want to go ahead. So you'd have to consider it again once you saw those prices. But yeah, I mean at the
So February date, February amount.
Okay, so then I think, then to me,
Just went in.
we should at least lock in some predictability for 3 to 6 months. I don't think that, I thought we could, I understand now. Our
I mean,
choice is extend or leave this essentially.
we can, I think there's not necessarily a lot of risk to locking in a rate because we can remind the residents that they can opt out at any time, right? I believe that's the case. And then
yes.
if somebody, I mean, they might, might take them a month to figure that out, or 2 months, I think, central Hudson bills, right? So they have to do a bit of work, but I think we're setting a default, so it's obviously impactful. But everybody has the option of not being into this at the moment. The rate is better. This is a good thing, but by the time 3 months is over, it might not be better. Well, like that's just how my understanding of CCA works, right? Is that's we would be doing the same thing for a year. This is just even less time.
Yeah, that's right. It's, yes.
I
Okay.
guess,
It's no different.
yeah, that's a really rational way to look at it. I guess I'm individually not feeling super confident that the picture on energy is gonna be better. I'm afraid it's gonna be worse.
Yeah.
In 6 months.
Yeah,
And so
that's my concern.
that's my hesitation here. But like if we lock in tonight, it's already higher than where we were, but 6 months from now, it could be bananas.
So Glenn, in that scenario, then what, do we have any options, or is it just, what would happen if the rates get worse in 3 to 6 months?
Are you talking about the rates to renew?
Sorry, when we go back to bid for another contract, say the prices do not improve, but they're actually, it's even
Yeah.
higher.
Yeah, I mean, there's of course that risk, right? I mean, so this is not like as what you just said, that if there was a way to sort of crack this, right? But that being said, what we are seeing right now is what the markets are telling us is that the rest of 2025 is really expensive. There's this concern over short-term energy price. As you go into 26 and 27, it settles, right? And what that means is that if you have the option to protect your current rate through most of, if not all of 2025, and then come back and negotiate for a rate that would mean for 26 and 27, what the math is telling us right now is that would be a better deal. Now, could it change, like to your point, like of course, could things get worse and maybe the trade policy goes so south that we're even in a worse position commodity wise than we are today. Of course, that's a possibility, and with this administration, it's maybe a likelihood, right? But if we're just sort of soberly looking at the market forwards, what it looks like is 2025 is really the prime offender price wise, and if we could preserve a price that we already have that and lock that in, which is we really feel is going to be a competitive rate for the duration of 2025, and at least give us the chance that maybe we'll come back in a few months and we're in a different market condition, because it's not even just the direction of price, but it's also just the volatility. The greater the volatility is up and down means for higher prices when you go out to bid for something like this, because the suppliers have less certainty in their models, So all of that points to now is not a great time. There's no guarantee that 3 months or 4 months will be a much better time or better at all. But if we're just looking at the kind of the curves themselves and trusting them, that would be our recommendation, to try to fix based on the current contract for as long as we could here in 2025, and then come back and look for a contract for 26 and 27.
Okay. So Glenn, what's the mechanism? What's the mechanism to move this forward? You're saying 3 months, 4 months, 6 months.
It's an ESA amendment. It's an ESA amendment. We have a cover. What we're going to deliver to you, hopefully tomorrow,
Okay.
is a 3-page document. The first page is a very short, sort of conditional. It's very similar to the MOU that we signed before the RFP generally, which is to say that if the following conditions are met, that the village is interested in moving forward, but acknowledging that some of this is still uncertain, which in this case is really the precise term length, right? So there's sort of a conditional cover page, and then it's a 2-page amendment to the ESA, one that describes a change to the end date and then a signature page. The reason I'm saying we're waiting for final version here is that Direct is still looking at what term they think might work, and they're doing so under difficult conditions, which is that the market is really unstable. So,
Okay. So we'll have something from you tomorrow, and we will reconvene next week to vote on the signature of that extension.
that sounds good. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that's okay, when's the deadline, Glenn?
The 21st.
Oh, okay, okay, great.
Today's the-
Yeah.
So we've got time, okay, good time. Thanks,
Okay.
Glenn.
Thank you so much. Okay, thanks for having me in.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, Glenn.
Okay, next we have a student filming request. I believe that the student is with us.
Jose and I believe Luke are with us.
Hello, Luke is unfortunately not with us. I'm Jose though, the director, so
Hello, nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
So you are contemplating filming in the village, not on public property, but on private property.
Yes,
Normally that would still require a permit fee from the village, but our code does allow for the waiving of fees for student films, if that's something that the board wishes to do. You're looking at 2 locations on March 18th from 5 in the afternoon to 12 midnight.
that's
One
correct.
in the plaza in front of Our Lady of Loretto, one in Depot Square, and the board will see that those 2 locations have given permission for him to be on that private property. I had a couple of quick questions for you, and then see if there are other questions from the board. At the Our Lady of Loretto location, there is a battery-powered generator located by the church. If it's as loud as our battery-powered generator, that's pretty loud. I'm wondering if you have the ability to locate it instead in their parking lot.
Is the battery power generator loud or a gas powered generator loud?
Yeah, give us a sense of loud, Jose. I mean, the both of them that we have are really loud.
My,
Tell us about it, Jose.
Yes, sorry. So the battery generator, sorry, like it's kind of muffled, but if you're asking me, sorry, if it would be possible to have it on the parking lot?
if I can ask, I think the battery power generator does not make noise, right?
No,
It's just
it
a
doesn't.
battery.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you might be thinking of a gas power generator,
Okay.
which is
Oh,
generally
we
loud.
also, there's one that we plug in as well. I guess that's what's in my mind.
Yeah, it would not be making noise, no.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But if the resident at 18 were to have concerns about the noise, is that something that could shift into the parking lot of the church, or is that too far away?
No, yes, absolutely. I actually met with Father Lutz,
Uh-huh.
and we discussed about noises and all his concerns, and yeah, he seemed pretty okay with the plan.
And do you expect when do you expect the bulk of the filming will happen? In the earlier part of the evening or the later part?
So I actually have the schedule right now with me. It would be basically from so the crew would arrive at Cold Spring at 5:20, and then we would be shooting from 6 to 7 outside of the depot. And then from 7 to midnight is when we would be shooting outside of the church of Our Lady of Loreto.
And you've got light towers, yeah?
Yeah, no, they're not huge, but yeah, we do have lighting equipment.
I open the floor to other board members. My only concern is that it's loud and light on a weekday, right?
Right.
Is it weekday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, in the middle of the week. Others have
Mhm.
thoughts?
Well, I just, is there any way to end it earlier than midnight? That's pretty late.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry about
For a
that.
small village.
No, yeah, I completely understand. It's just since the film's supposed to take place at night, so we're gonna try to rush it. We're gonna try to get everything done as soon as possible. But yeah, to be honest, I would have to talk to the assistant director about the schedule and see if we can maybe reduce the number of shots that we get to finish earlier. But yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. All I can say is that the scenes would be pretty quiet, and we would make sure that everyone is just like like being we would make sure like no one is screaming in the scene. There is not action going on. It's just like a bunch of dialogue, and we would make sure that the crew like stays as quiet as possible for sure.
And I think it's the lights too
It's
that
the
I'm
light,
concerned.
do the lights,
Oh,
will they hit residents' windows?
oh, I see. No, not at
Yeah,
all. They're gonna be very subtle because we still wanna keep like the lighting is mainly just so that you can see the face of the actors, but we don't want like any extreme stuff. It's gonna be very dim lit, a very dim lit scene. I'm pointing at the actors, and like it's not gonna be super bright at all. Gonna be very minimal.
Is
The clerk is sharing a point here. Why don't you shut so everybody can?
So Jose, if I understand your shoot plan correctly, you're gonna be shooting towards the north on the plaza? And that's not towards the residences, you're shooting more towards the church itself than towards the residences adjacent to the church?
Yes, exactly, sir.
So you're capturing the front of the church as
Yes,
opposed
it
to
would just
lighting
be.
sort of.
Yes, it would be just the front of the church. That's right, sir.
And then, Jose, thanks for the pictures also. They're really helpful. It looks, according to the picture in front of the Depot restaurant, that you might be shooting in the middle of the street. Is that possible? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Aaron. Yes.
So, but you also say you don't need the street closed. So how can you talk us through that? If you're going to shoot in the middle of the street, but your application says you don't need the street closed.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, that must have been a miscommunication with Luke Flanagan, who submitted the application. So what we were thinking of doing is when we went on the scout. Sorry, this maybe was our bad. it was super quiet and super silent. So we were just thinking that so the crew and the camera would be in a position where, you know, no cars can go through, and the actor would be kind of in the middle of the square, and there would be someone seeing if there are any cars coming. If there is a car coming, like we would just tell the actor to move, of course. So I guess that's why Luke Flanagan, the producer, said that we didn't need the street closed.
I mean, traffic is low at night, but I would have a concern about not having the road closed if you have someone with a camera.
Yeah, I
Is weird. Others
understand.
share that concern.
Well, it's a commuting night, so there will be cars
Yeah.
picking up commuters at that time. And I'm just looking at the depot. The depot's also open on a Tuesday night,
Yeah.
so there'll also be restaurant customers coming.
I see.
So, and that, I know you visited, but if you're on foot, you might not realize that because Main Street dead ends there,
Mhm.
cars turn onto Depot Square to make the loop back up Railroad. So,
Yeah.
when is a train coming in and there are pickups and drop-offs, there are
Mhm.
quite a lot of cars. I myself am not super comfortable with not having the street closed.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. That makes complete sense. I apologize for that misplanning.
No apology needed. This is a new location for you and you're working out details. The other thing I would be concerned about is saying a hard stop at 10 at the latest. Yeah. Aaron and Tweeps, do you have any other thoughts?
Not specifically. I mean, if there is a way to not block the street at all, that would be a lot easier for us to consider, right?
Absolutely, and I would just love to say, like, we can absolutely readapt the scene so it doesn't take place in the middle of the scene. Absolutely, like, no problem whatsoever. You
They
know,
have an outdoor patio that's, I'm sure, not being used. I don't know if you can use, or like, there's other parts of that street that are associated with the restaurant that maybe give you some other spaces.
Well, and while we can waive permitting fees, if you are closing the street, we do need an officer, and that is a block time charge.
yes,
And we couldn't waive that. So I know you're tight on dollars.
yeah, and I understand. So we can absolutely readapt the scene so we should in a part of the depot that would not require the street to be closed.
Here's what I think. Well, I'll propose to the board, that Jose rework his plan and come back to us for next week.
Yes. So just one thing is that I'm kind of worried that I would like to say is so we're shooting March 18. So if next week when I come back and the plan is, you know, well thought, and of course we have figured out this issue, then it will be fine to be approved for the, you know, the 18. I guess it's my concern. I don't know.
If you do a really good job planning, and if you stay in touch with Greg, who can he can be helping us communicate with you and how you're
Okay, absolutely.
how you're making progress.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just yeah, of course. Yeah, I will make sure to
And
that-
Jose, did you hear the other part of the mayor's suggested change is to end at 10 p.m.
To be honest, Mayor, like that just in terms of timing, I don't think would be possible to get all of the shots that we need. We if possible, because yeah, we would just not be able to get the shots that we need, unfortunately, in time.
Well, you'd be okay on Depot because the building the residential building that faces on that is empty, the big one. But on Fair Street, you're in a really dense residential neighborhood.
I understand.
What
you
about
may-
swapping the order so that you do the church first
Yeah,
and do the depot after, because it will impact you, you know, it's not residential there.
absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. Yeah, we can shoot first we'll shoot then first outside of the church. Thank you. Yeah, and then we'll go to the depot. Absolutely.
Okay,
Does
so
that I mean, I would be okay with that if it came back in that way.
Yeah.
And allowing it
Till
till midnight
midnight?
then?
Well, then it's in, at.
But is that, but is that the depot?
It's not, who's that?
Well, there is is it number 2? The yellow building on the corner has apartments. And the folks on, there's a house low on Railroad, but they're
the
gonna be,
lights are on. Well, I mean, if you're swapping. Yeah, I guess, what the scene at the depot requires the same lighting situation as the one at the church?
It's more very minor lighting that we would be using in front of the depot, very minor. And it's just 3 shots that we're getting, so it would also be relatively, it's the easy part of the shoot in front of the depot.
And I think we don't know the location of the lights yet, right?
right,
Because
well, actually, they're marked on the map.
Well, that was for
in the middle of the street,
location.
and I think we've asked them to
Oh,
change.
you mean on Depot, yeah.
Yes.
Got it. I was looking at the Fair Street one. All right, so I would make a motion to table until next week. Jose, work with Greg.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We'll see you next week.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. And I guess then that's the thing that I have to figure out, right? Like just not shooting in the middle of the street.
Not shooting in the middle of the street and making sure that the lighting is such that it has the least impact
Okay, absolutely, yeah.
And
on residents, yeah.
and one more is being done at the church before 10.
That's 5 hours there.
Yeah, it's just since the scene takes place at night, like we cannot really start shooting on this night.
Well, Jose, we may not be the right location for you. I'm sorry,
No.
this is a residential neighborhood. So
No, I completely understand. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be like offline. I
no,
just
it's okay. Our options are limited here. We have, because we'll be the ones who get the calls from the folks who are mad about the lighting and the sound.
No, absolutely, I understand. And I just wanna like say that even before 10 p.m., we would make sure like the lighting is not bothering and that we're as quiet as possible. Like, but absolutely, like I'll talk to Luke and to the team and yeah, we'll be finished before 10.
Sounds good. Great. Okay. See you next
Okay.
week.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Next item is approval of, it's time for the fishing derby again. Nelsonville Fish and Fur. Things I did not know, founded in 1895, oldest continuous hunt and woodsman club in New York State. Did not know that. They've been doing this event for years, where they stock our reservoir, the Foundry Pond Reservoir by the water treatment plant, help clear brush and let kids fish. We have approved this for many years. The water department has customarily provided the porta potty as a gift toward the event, and it's been very successful. Any discussion? It's May 4th, the Sunday.
I'll make a motion, please. I make a motion to approve the request to use Fishkill Road Reservoir on May 4th for the Nelsonville Fish and Fur Club Fishing Derby.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And the best thing is for local people with permits, when they fish, when they stock it, there's a number of weeks after that are really good fishing. Okay, next we have 2 rec requests. One is coming in close to the event, but there is a happy wedding that would like to go forward. Resident Leslie Leonard is officiating at the bandstand Saturday, March 15th, setting up at 10. Event starting at 11, ending at noon, breakdown by 1. It's 7 people. I don't expect that there's going to be a lot of setup. Any discussion? It has been vetted by the
Right.
event coordinator, and she has marked off all of the things she needed to mark off. They have their insurance. Good?
Yeah.
Someone would like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve application for a wedding March 15th, set up time at 10 a.m., starting at 11, ending at 1 p.m.
Make a motion? I'll second. Yes, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the next is.
Trustee
Oh,
Bernard,
I'm sorry.
did we get one from you?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next is a return event also. Founder Montessori School does its International Day at the bandstand. It's adorable. They parade down Main Street and sing on the steps. Same request, about 75 people. The parents come and watch. Parents and family members come and watch. Lillian has discussed it. The events coordinator has discussed it with the police department to make sure that we have the road safe and clear. Lillian, anything to add? Oh, she was on. Oh, she is.
She is. I don't know how to go out mute though.
Nope, we're good to go. Nothing really. Everybody's ready and willing to help participate in this wonderful event.
Okay, so who would like to make a motion? I'll go for it.
I make a motion to approve the application for the Foundry Montessori School for an event on April 25th, setting up at 10 a.m., starting at 10:15 and ending at 10:30 a.m.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Almost done with the regular stuff. So we have, at the wastewater treatment, the water treatment plant, there are two big blue towers that you can see from the road, tanks. One of them has a leak. It's not a terrible leak, but we don't want to be dumping treated drinking water. So for now, Matt has brought the level down in the tank below the leak. It's about 30 feet up, so he's got it down for now. But we would like to have it repaired as soon as possible. It is also the time annually when we have to have those tanks inspected. And statewide, Aquastore, which is actually the company that manufactures the tanks, was willing to give us a discount price if we did the inspections and the repair all at the same time, about $10,000 less than the other quote. And it's someone that we have worked with before. You know, we have experience with them, and again, they're the manufacturer. So he is recommending accepting their bid of $4,000 for the inspections and $1,250 for the repair. Discussion?
No, I think it makes sense to do both at the same time. So
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal of statewide Aquastore for inspection and repair of our water tanks. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, and thank you for adding that on. Wait, he was able to get an appointment next week, and us passing it tonight allows him to take that appointment. Okay, bills. Who's got bills?
You also skip the EV charger, I don't know.
Oh, I had. Sorry, let's just do bills and get that out of the way, and we can talk about chargers. So email the number.
Batch number 777. One more 7.
Thank you, Michelle. You two have reviewed the invoices. We just don't have the slip in front of us.
So I have it at an amount of $136,748.34.
Are you making a motion for us to
I
pay those bills?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
See, and you thought it was boring, but you know, it actually is kind of amusing and fun, right? Okay. All right, next, EV chargers.
everything in the end of amusement.
Okay, so the saga continues with trying to locate EV chargers in the village. Been talking about this for like 5 years or something. It's insane. Again, we have a grant for about $16,000 that's designated for this. The challenge is to find an appropriate location given our dense historic village with infrastructure. So thanks to Michelle's good thinking, we thought of another location. Oh, just to go through. So again, we looked at Mayor's Park, but it flooded. Main Street along St. Mary's, but there's underground stormwater infrastructure. The municipal lot, but there is unknown and seems unknowable possibility of a water pipe, like water utility pipe that would risk breaking, and the shutoff valve is quite far away. So it seemed like too big of a risk. And then we looked at some other sites kind of early on that fell by the wayside too. So the latest idea is High Street along McConville or Tots Park. So what's nice about this is that there's no residences. I don't think we should cite it in front of someone's residence, given that they might use park there. It's still close, you know, it's like relatively close to Main Street, but it's also in the village for residents who might want to use it for their own vehicles. I checked with Bugsy and Matt, and there's no infrastructure that they're aware of that they have concerns about. It's also because High Street has two sides and most people have driveways, or many people have driveways. It seems quite uncommon for that to be used for resident parking. It's part of the residential parking program.
Or it's not used completely.
It's not used completely.
Right.
I checked in with Eliza by email about it a while ago, and she had kind of agreed about that. To make the financials work, we'd still have to do 4 ports. So it would be 4 spaces for it, with a level 2 charger. So the ones that are like not the super fast, but it's better than the like super duper slow. And it would be fully covered. It's the same company that we talked about before, and it would be fully covered by the grant. And as far as process, there's still a long way to go. If we are interested in pursuing this, then the mayor would sign this initial agreement. Then the company Linkable will come out and do a site visit and make a site plan. I think that then again, I think gets signed.
Okay.
Then we have to make an application to Central Hudson for their Make Ready grant funding, and that's the really key to making the finances work on it. So that would have to be approved, and then they would install.
But so far, Central Hudson, my understanding is that at each location we've looked at, Central Hudson has been cooperative and helpful.
Yeah, and they seem to approve. Doesn't seem competitive from what I can tell. They seem to approve.
Okay, well, before that money's gone,
Oh, and that side of the street has telephone poles. So, you know, we haven't gotten Central Hudson's eyes on it to tell us if, you know, what the capacity is in that area, but at least the telephone poles are on that side of the street. So like, to me, it doesn't scream out problems yet. You never know.
So how do, so the spots would be designated for charging. How does it work when they're like?
Yeah,
when
so,
they're not?
so we'd have to make a decision about how to treat it. Because it's currently residential parking only. So what we could consider is making it the way that some other ends of the street are, that it is open, or like what Northern is, right? That it's open to the public, free.
help us with our shifting.
And it could, yeah, and we may need to identify more spaces since we took some off of Northern
Free space.
for safety. So they'd be free spaces, but I hope that we would sign and enforce that cars should only be parked there when they're charging. So that they're not,
On those
so
four
that's,
spots.
yeah, on those 4 spots, because otherwise other cars will take the spaces and they won't get to be used by EVs that have
Yeah.
commonly with EVs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Laura, I know you're also an EV car owner, and like one of the weird things about EV cars is that there's no standard for where the charging port is, right? So it could be on the passenger side or the driver's side or whatever, and just remind me, the units that we're planning have long enough cables to reach all the way across a car to the far side?
Yeah. So that will work fine. We can choose whether we want to have a cable management system. The upside of that is that it stops them from being on the ground. They're a little bit more expensive and they're a little bit higher. So we could see if we think that that's important in that area. And it would be parallel parking. So it would be, actually there might be single ports. It might be single, I can't remember.
Four single ports, maybe.
Yeah, I think they
Okay.
changed the proposal on Main Street that it was going to be 2 double. So
Okay.
2 double, and then it would be long enough.
Yeah, kind of remember that too. Have we considered and ruled out the parking across from the tennis courts by the ball field.
Yeah.
We don't own that.
Oh, by the tennis courts,
Yeah.
yeah, Haldane owns that.
That's Haldane.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there's,
We have an agreement with them to use it for winter parking, but they own it, and they're very protective of those spots.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and rightly so.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I would say I'm glad to hear other ideas. I feel like I've gone through a lot of them and many of them have issues. So,
Our next best option.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you need from us tonight? You needed.
I think I need authorize the mayor to sign this, like initial form, sign the EV charging station proposal.
And then they come out and do a site visit and we determine from there.
Sorry, I have another question on this. I'm just picturing like a vehicle charging and then like, oops, it's like a couple days later, they're still there because they just figure like, well, I was charging and like, would they leave their car?
Can't, because there are time limits on parking.
So we,
The side streets.
I think we would have to set,
What's the time limit?
it's like 4 hour, the street corners are something like 4 hours, or then you
They're
can park
5 hours
overnight,
and I've
5
seen
hours.
people stay
So
all
then
day
I
and
think,
overnight.
I mean, I think then it's up to us to set out what are the rules that we want to put into the code and then explain to the officers or the parking enforcement officers what to enforce. And we have to make the signs clear, but I mean, I think a lot of this is up to,
Well,
you know, how much we want.
And there's an alternative way to enforce this, which is becoming more common, which is idle fees, right? If we presumably we're going to charge for this, right? So how Phillipstown does this at the town hall is it's a certain amount per hour while you're charging, and then the rate goes up after the charging has finished. And so it becomes a disincentive to keep your car there because you got to pay more money.
It's the same company. It's the same charging company. So we would be able to do that too. That's great.
I was just gonna say, Aaron, that, because I live near there, I can see people charging. And
Right.
it does seem to have pretty steady turnover. You don't see
Yes.
you don't see people leaving it there overnight. Now I understand the why.
Yep.
That's cool.
So, and that's no code change, right? That's just,
Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
Okay.
I'm okay with it. Somebody needs to make a motion.
So I make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the Linkwell EV charging station proposal for the High Street by McConville Park site.
All in favor? Aye.
I
Thank you.
hope it works out. Thank
Cross your
you.
fingers.
We're gonna send the statue of Laura.
Yeah, I'm gonna be bronze.
Yes.
Well, the charging station sometimes comes with names, so we can name it Laura.
I can name.
Right.
All right, well, now really fun stuff. Let's head to budget. Michelle Ascolillo, the village accountant, is with us. Just a few introductory things. So this last budget season, it will be ending in June. A few things that we accomplished. We operationalized some new revenue sources that we didn't have before. Paid parking, resident parking permits, occupancy tax. We also had some surprises. We had unexpected film revenue. We had some significant savings in the employee insurance plan. But we also had a ton of infrastructure needs. And we had needs across all three of our funds, the general fund, the water fund, and the wastewater fund. So tonight, Michelle is going to be talking us through over the next few weeks, sort of where we are and how we might project for next year, for next budget cycle. And so tonight is just the first discussion. Just for the public, a couple of reminders. So we operate on a fiscal year of June 1 to May 31st. So right now we are in fiscal year 25. Fiscal year is the year that the budget year ends. So tonight we're going to be working on fiscal year 26. The three village funds are general fund, which pays for most things, and then water, obviously related to water items, and sewer related to wastewater. We'll go through these budgets individually. And as I said, review revenues and expenses. And tonight we'll focus on the big picture topics, the tax levy and the real property tax cap, some general conversation about the needs in the year ahead. And developing the budget is collaborative among the trustees, the village staff, right? Our department heads put forward budget requests. We go through a process of performance appraisals to consider staff pay, and we consider public input. And over the coming weeks, we'll drill down and draft and revise and approve through a multi-session process. We do need to follow a calendar that's dictated by New York State law. We have to have a preliminary budget by the 20th of March. And it's important to know that at this level, the budget has to be balanced. We don't have an option to run a deficit or otherwise. It has to be balanced under the law. And we need to have a public hearing and adopt that budget by the 23rd of April. So we have our work cut out for us. You know, we started to talk a little bit a couple of weeks ago about goals. I think 26 is going to be primarily about infrastructure. We're going to be needing to make some decisions about funding the kickoff of the dam repairs, and be thinking about bonding and bond payments. And we're going to need to plan for fronting the repairs on Fair Street while we wait for FEMA reimbursement. So we've got some really big ticket items that are going to be in front of us and are going to drive some of our other decisions. So with that, I will turn it over to Michelle. You want to pull up a chair and be at the table? Aaron, did all the packets make their way to you by email?
I received a lot. I'm unable to confirm whether all of the packets got to me, but I received a lot.
What was the last time you got one? That should have been Michelle's last pack.
Right.
Oh, great, you got it. Okay.
All David.
Just want to clarify one thing about the budget. We're aiming for April 23rd. Statutory, it's May 1st. But following our meeting schedule, give us, a little buffer in case we need to make changes. Aiming for the 23rd, but it's actually May 1st that it has to be adopted. Thank you.
Get it done. Get through it, get it over with.
So the first big discussion is the tax cap, which is in the general fund. The state puts out a worksheet every year, and there are 4 components that come into the tax cap. The first one is an increase for a tax base growth. So if there's any additions or any value added to the village's tax roll, this is additional tax that the village is able to levy. The second one is the most familiar, the 2% cap. You can go 2% over the levy from last year or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. It's 2% this year. The third component, which does not apply to the village, is a carryover. The village has exercised a carryover amount in the past. We don't have any available this year. That would be if the board decides not to levy the full amount, you're able to levy a significant portion of that in the following year. And the fourth component is increase for any exclusions. These don't come every year. This year, there's a small exclusion related to police and fire retirement system. It's a minute amount, but it still is part of it. So at the end of the day, when you add these 4 categories together, the village is able to levy an additional $52,101 over the levy amount from last year. This is a 2.7% increase over last year. Yes, it's over 2%, but it does not go over the cap. It's because of this calculation. Because of increased assessed values and the calculation, it ends up being a 0.96, so a little less than 1% increase per $1,000. So the total amount being levied from the entire village, all the properties, is a 2.7% increase. But for each $1,000 of assessed value on your individual property, it goes up to $12.27 from $12.16, barely 1%. Given a lot of the big ticket items that we're going to talk about throughout the night, I think we should start possibly with the full tax cap. It is less than last year's. There are bond payments we need to talk about, cost of inflation, rising costs. In other years, we may have started lower. I've done quick drafts behind the scenes that aren't ready yet, but looking at some of the things from the departments coming in, if the board's okay, I'd like to build the budget at the cap. And then if anything, bring it down later. I think we need to start there this year.
I would agree.
So we'll start there. So that would be 52,000.
Michelle, can I, you might have switched this one. You have the examples. So this is example estimated $25 increase for a house assessed at $200,000. So the $25 like with the proposed tax increase, it's $25 more tax bill for a $200,000 house. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
And I appreciate that you do that breakdown for us in terms of what houses, what our real estate picture looks like in terms of assessment.
Any questions on the tax cap?
But it sounds like we didn't hear from, I think you nodded. Aaron?
No question from me. Thank you.
Okay, so you agreeing we have Michelle start calculating at 2%?
Well, it's the 2.7, yes.
Yes, but the full percentage.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, go on.
Skipping to water and wastewater, so that we could talk about rates. Just need to get all the rates done in the beginning. To start that, before we move into the water rates, the board is moving forward with dam repairs. A rough estimate from the dam engineers is that this dam repair will be $8 million. We've talked about that before. You're awarded.
Can I pause just for a second? Because I want to make sure that this is part of the record and everybody understands. When we talk about the dam, we're talking about the first of our 5 impoundments, all the way up at near Lake Surprise. This $8 million is for that first impoundment. That's not touching any of our other impoundments. So it's exciting that we have this money, but it's just the start of dealing with our dams through the system. So it's going to be a while that we're talking about rates and bonding related to our water system. But tonight we're talking about one wall.
Okay. So that estimated amount, roughly 8 million, maybe 8.5. We've received an award for 2.5 million. So that leaves us with, 5.5 to 6 million that needs to be bonded unless other grant sources. But given right now, if this happened tomorrow, the bond would be for the full amount. So just to get a picture of what that looks like for the village, a $6 million bond over 30 years. A market interest rate in bonds right now is 4.75. That would be a yearly payment for principal and interest of $380,000. $380,000 each year for 30 years. So when we talk about that number, we move into water rates and where we are and how we build a schedule or increases to try and cover this payment. Construction isn't happening tomorrow, but it's a lot nearer in the future than it has been in the past. I think it's 2 years out, right?
We have to finish in 5 years.
Yeah, and then, go ahead.
That's otherwise it's a grant. So.
The grant has a 5-year period, and then also we have a period with the DEP where we have an agreement for the period of time when the dam has to be down and we have to buy water, where they're giving us a preferred rate. It's still expensive. It's still gonna be roughly $1,000 a day to buy water. That's the number we figured out, right?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
I think that was the number we landed on. It's a lot. We're gonna be buying water every day. So they are attempting to incentivize us to get the dam done as well.
So keeping this in mind, in front of you are proposals. So the top chart is a water. The very top, you'll see example A, B, and C. And these are just examples on increases. If the water flat rate was to increase $20 per quarter.
No, I think you're on that vertical page, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you had gone to the one where you were.
Erin, vertical page, no highlighting. This is water revenue quarterly up top, all right? Yeah.
Oh, good.
Got it, thanks.
Do you have a colored sheet?
We all have this one.
That was mine. I'm gonna be working off of this one.
That's the one I picked up off the printer and didn't, yeah, okay.
So
This is for the next level of discussion, yeah?
we're not ready for that.
We're not ready for this one.
We need to use.
We're fine.
Thank you.
So example A, B, and C, for example, $20 increase per quarter. It's a 30% increase over the flat rate right now. In district, it's $86.25. But in theory, assuming all the water rents that we have, the same number of units in the district, that brings in an additional $35,000. So $20 per quarter increase equates to $35,000. That's 9% of a bond payment, if the bond payment was to be at 380. 380 is an estimate. Interest rates could go down. Not likely, bonds are usually higher. But it could, but it's still gonna be significant. We could get more grants and then it would be better, but right now, this is where we are. If the village was to double the quarterly rate, that would bring in an extra 116,000, or roughly 31% of this bond payment. The village will need to figure out long-term, working with financial advisors and bond counsel, if this sits in the water fund, if some of this payment comes from the general fund, in the horizon. And we'll have to get there soon, but I don't think we're there yet. But in any event, some of this, if not all of it, will have to come from the water fund. I don't know, it's a little shock how expensive it is. But to make the repairs, the village has to figure out how to pay for it.
I think it's also useful to point out, Michelle, that for a really long time, the usage rates and the flat rate that we charge were not adjusted much. And so we did take a jump in 2022. Usage. On the usage side, yeah. Now we're talking about a flat rate, the rent for access to the line. But we kind of have artificially low, because the village hasn't adjusted numbers in a long time, we have artificially low numbers right now when we look at other municipalities and their flat rates for water. So we're talking about change, but relative to other municipalities and the product that you're getting, the clean drinking water you're getting, and the staffing and the chemicals and all that it takes to deliver clean water to your faucet, we've been undercharging for some time.
Kathleen, that's very helpful. Do we have a comparison of other
Yeah, on
municipalities?
that vertical chart, Michelle wrote out the years that we've had increases.
So the water plant was established, I believe, in 97 when its first rate came about. And then a rate increase happened in 2004 and then 2023.
Yeah.
So 18 years we sat with no change.
Sorry, I'm not being clear. I mean, do we have a comparison with rates today with other municipalities?
Oh, we have it from 2022, when we raised it last time. We'd have to update it for the current rate.
Mhm. Okay.
But it's something we've got as baseline data, yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
yeah,
Jimmy.
I think that would be helpful for everybody to see, obviously, right? To
Yep.
see, because what I'm concerned about here, and thanks again, Michelle, for laying this out clearly. And these are just hypotheticals, right? This is not what the board's talking about, increasing the rates, by any certain amount or anything like that. But, as you're saying, Kathleen, if this is one of several repairs that we're going to have to do, and this one is so expensive, we're considering a model where rates are going up by this much. I mean, how do we conceivably pay for anything else? Right? It just becomes a lot, right?
But I think that's the rub. Like, that's what's so challenging about this, Aaron, is that we have a high hazard dam that is like, has been ignored for years. It's decades. And it is incredibly expensive. We don't really have an alternative. And I know, I mean, that's a miserable thing to say when you look at these numbers and realize that they're getting us 30% of the way. But we've also, Michelle and I have looked at other grants, and we can go back to WQIP this summer, and we will, for land acquisition funding, but it's small. Our consultant laid out a pathway potentially for like the sort of state version of FEMA, but it was small and our chances are low. Like, it would be great to think about other things besides the rate increases, but I don't know what they are. And I think that our alternative then is to privatize our water source, which I feel really strongly against. And so, like, Aaron, I hear you, and I push back about raising water rates because it's it's a health necessity, but I don't see an alternative.
Well, and I think it's also important, as Michelle talks with us, to when you say doubling, it's a terrifying number. When you break it down to what that means on a monthly basis and on a quarterly basis per household, we're talking, if it's a $20 increase, we're talking about $5 over a quarter. So
No, $20 per quarter.
$20 per quarter, I'm sorry. So
$5 a month.
$5 a month is what I meant. Yeah. So $5 a month. So it's a reasonably small impact per household to get us to a larger place. And I will say, having worked with Laura on grants, there's not a single stone that this woman and this woman have not turned over. We hit a point of eligibility related to federal and state funding because of our demographics in Phillipstown on a lot of grants, which is a bummer. We socioeconomically do quite well in the town, but our village budgets and capacity to raise tax money is limited. So we've got to do something because we have to fix the dam, we have to keep people safe, and we have to provide clean drinking water.
Is this something that we could go to the county and make some kind of request for? It's a I don't know, I'm just trying to think.
Well,
I
so
agree
I
about
went-
trying to think of something outside of
I went to the
rates,
state of the
but
county.
it's not a lot.
I went to the state of the county address on Monday night. The county is sitting on, it's like almost gross to talk about, $58 million in sales tax surplus. And I have been with the 6 town supervisors and the 2 other village mayors. We are advocating to get just a portion of that redistributed to the towns and villages for infrastructure costs. It's a real change in thinking for Putnam County, but this time it's not just Phillipstown going and asking, it's all 6 towns going together and three villages signing on together. So our strength is a bit better now. And I'm hoping that we can make some difference there. There was talk last year of creating a municipal fund that would be available on a competitive basis for the municipalities, and the position that we as supervisors and mayors have been taking is we have to compete enough already for state and federal grants. We don't have capacity to keep competing, and it's money that was generated here. We're just asking for our own money back. So all I can say is, yes, I hope we can get some money from the county.
Yeah, that was, I think I pulled this aside, but.
Well, but it's useful for the public to know that there is money that the county is sitting on. I mean, and at some point it becomes absurd.
I do think it's important to note that the grants that the village has been awarded, dams were previously ineligible for practically
That's right.
all state funding and federal funding. Dams were always excluded. It's one of the reasons why when we started ARPA, even though the dam wasn't ready back then, dams were excluded originally because it was always excluded from the Clean Water Revolving Act at the state, on the drinking water, the clean waters, wastewater, drinking water. Dams are always excluded, and it's new in the past few years that they're included. So for the village to get this 2.5, it doesn't sound like it makes a dent, but it's significant progress.
Yeah.
But there is a lot more to go. In other municipalities, when we did look at the rates in the past, it's not uncommon, more on the sewer side, but not uncommon when a sewer plant or sewer lot district needs a rehaul, that their rates triple to pay for the upgrade because there is no other choice. So while it's a big jump and it's hard to double it, it is not uncommon in the area. I think within 20 miles, like I looked at Fishkill, East Fishkill, different districts, even talking to Munisnet, the financial advisors, they've seen it too, double and tripling rates to pay for capital projects.
Yeah, and it's also important to recognize that we are not the only community with high hazard dams. This is a problem all across New York State. And the state ultimately, in not, for so many years, not funding dam repairs, kind of screwed itself, right? Set itself and municipalities up to be in this position because it just dams kept getting pushed down the road, pushed down the road, pushed down the road. And now here we are. So thanks for the $2.5 million, we'll take it.
So that's talking about flat rates. There is also the usage side. Could be a combination, could be one or the other. An example for usage, if you went up 10% from the current usage rate, that adds 33 cents per 1,000 gallons. Given current usage, which has trended down from the year before I rerun. So I
We're
took
also in drought for a big chunk of the year.
I took usage from January of 24 through December of 24 to capture a full 12-month period. And so using those numbers, it's not a perfect science, but it's a trend that we have, bring in about 21,000, which is 5.5%. So some kind of combination of the two would take a lot to get to 380, but if we at least start moving in that direction, especially given the 5 years that we have. Thoughts on usage versus flat rate?
I mean, we did a jump in 2022 from $2.34 to 305 on the usage side.
That was in 04.
I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong line. 305 to 320. No, 2022 was the first year we as an administration jumped.
Yeah.
234 to 305. And then we did a smaller raise in 2024.
2022, we had went up 15 cents per 1,000.
Right.
In 2024, it's 10 cents. So we sit at 330 right now.
Right. So we hit that side first on usage because our thought was, and it sounds like the drought's a factor, but it sounds like some of our theory may have worked, right? The tie, we were talking at that time in terms of budget goals about tying together people's usage and cost to communicate the value of the product you're getting, right?
It also means that you can lower your costs by being more
That's
conservative,
where I'm
and
going
then
with
flat
this.
rates, it's equal.
And everyone across the system is threatened by the dam. Everyone across the system benefits from the repair. I myself would rather see a flat rate increase.
And I think the flat rate would be more stable because of, you have the ability to watch your consumption.
Yes. Thoughts from others?
Can we just continue talking so that we can have some time to think?
No decision, it's to start the conversation when we get into the water and sewer line items.
Yeah.
There'll have to be something for that payment.
And Michelle, again, you had addressed this before, but for the expected $380,000 bond payment that we have to make each year, how much of that has to come from the water and wastewater budget? Is that all of it or just a portion of it?
It wouldn't come from wastewater at all. It
Okay.
could potentially come from a mixture of general fund and water fund.
Yeah.
But both funds will have the same issue.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And that was something that you talked to our financial advisor about, was whether we could use general fund for dam stuff.
Because it's infrastructure, it's a unique situation where it's infrastructure and it's water infrastructure. Wastewater, in front of you is similar examples. A and B talk about potentially increasing flat rate. Examples 1 and 2 talk about a potential increase to usage. These numbers are examples and illustrative. We don't have a bond payment to target here, but it costs go up every day in the sewer fund, and a lot of big ticket items are consistently replaced. So I do think we'll need some kind of adjustment. Thankfully, there's no big bond payment sticker shock to talk about for this one.
Yeah.
At
But
the
we do have
moment.
to be realistic that we have had a number of major equipment failures. The plant was built between 68 and 70. And things break. That's going to be part of life with it.
Those are the 3 main revenue sources: taxes, water rents, sewer rents. Like to talk to the board if they have any thoughts on any other revenue sources. Typically, we have parking, which is both lot rent or all lot rentals, metered residential permits. We now have an occupancy tax. There's docking. Just want to talk generically where board members feel about parking. It's $2. We're going to keep it at $2 under assumptions that we've made last year. So last year I assumed that occupancy on,
spreadsheet for that.
yes, that occupancy for parking was about 70% utilized in the busy season and 35% in the off season. Main Street is much more full right now. So from June through January, we're about 50% of the budget, but we still have a couple months to go. But on average, it's about 70% monthly of the budget. So you would assume that $4 to $2, the budget gets cut in half. But we're trending higher than that at about 70%. I think we're going to finish out the year. So that says that we can raise our assumptions. And I think a good baseline for next year would be to take the budget we had last year and use 70% of that. A little more sophisticated behind the scenes, but that's where it would essentially end up, 70% of what's in the budget for 24-25. Permits are about the same. What we expected to sell and bring in revenue matches the budget. Lot rentals, we've talked about, exploring that in the past, not at this moment anywhere ready to make changes. I would assume that the lease with Hudson House would continue.
Yeah, Eliza has been in conversation with Regina about new terms there and the potential for, they don't need the whole lot for parking.
Remind me, I don't remember how many
So-
spots are in the, I mean, I know the story of the the lot, but how many spots are in it?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. But it's also, I don't know if we have talked about this, but it was the conversation around the Market Street lot, New Street lot, excuse me, has always been that it was a condition of the site plan approval to require parking at that lot. However, we went back and pulled minutes, and it was not a condition of the site plan approval, much as has been described for many years. It was tied to, excuse me, it wasn't tied to occupancy at all. It was tied to the height variance that was required when they raised the building in 80 something, 83, I think, as a sort of an impact mitigation for the height at the waterfront to require them to rent that lot for parking. So it's not tied to site plan, it's not tied to occupancy, it's tied to that. So where we thought we didn't have as much flexibility about that lot, we have more. And the Hudson House has said that they don't need the whole lot, and they would like to have conversations about reducing the spaces that they are using, so that we can meter the rest of the lot. So that is in conversation. I haven't talked to Eliza about that recently to know what the status is, but that is another source of potential revenue.
I think we, are looking at a lot of required expenses here. So, we should consider things like metering more days on Main Street as well. I mean, Main Street has been, like Michelle said, I mean, quite full all the time with the meters, right? And I think the adjustments that we made last year to the lower rates and the more flexibility in times were largely successful. I know that there's some analysis going on right now, and looking at this a little bit more holistically, but parking seems quite full on Thursdays and on Wednesdays, and not sure where we'll end up, but it's worth a discussion because it does seem like this is a good lever we have for taxing something on usage when we can't and we don't want to raise property taxes more.
Right. And one of the things, the way we landed originally we had talked about it as full week. And we pulled back from that at the request of residents who were concerned about having parking restrictions on the side streets all week long, and that making their lives difficult in terms of visitors and contractors, et cetera. So we tied the meters being on to when resident parking was in force. I think that I know Eliza has been working on looking at other ways to manage visitors and contractors, so it's less clunky than it is now, so that it's more self-service and easier. And if we can get that right, Aaron, I think that will make that discussion a bit easier. Because what we don't want to do, we don't want to burden the side streets, making it difficult to live on your street, right? So we have to make sure that if we do turn the meters on during the week, we're providing flexibility for the residents so they're not feeling constrained on their blocks. But I agree that it's a user-based source.
Can I ask, would it be worth considering if resident parking is 9 to 6, moving the meters from 10 to 6 to 9 to 6? It's small amount, but it might help a little bit.
It might help. How we got there, as I recall, tell me if I'm remembering this correctly, was that we set the meters at 10 so that local folks who wanted to come down and grab coffee and do early morning things on Main Street could do that for free. So that there would be until 10 o'clock to be in and out on Main Street. So that's a discussion to have.
We've also talked about expanding further up, like 301, right? I mean, I think that takes, that's another level of infrastructure and a bigger area for the staff to monitor. But
we do have the capability, because we secured the enabling legislation for most of the village to move into the upper part of the village. There are considerations that things we need to take into account up there. Churches without parking lots, figuring out how we're gonna manage Sunday, all of that. But I ultimately, that was the vision, that at some point we could be able to derive revenue from visitor parking in the upper part of the village as well, because people are parking all the way to town hall at this stage, even in the quiet season. I mean, the village there were so many people on the streets this week, even on the colder days during the week.
Right. It's also worth noting that the Muni lot just really does not get a lot of usage, right? Yeah. And maybe that's I don't know if that's something that you're looking at about. It's quite a property. I mean, it's a great location, and it just people don't park there, right? So not sure what we can do
with that lot. And I know Eliza is not able to be with us tonight for this discussion. She would be able to represent better the kinds of things she's looking at, but the signage has always been terrible at the municipal lot. It's not clear how you pay. It's not clear that it is a municipal lot, etc. So I think there's probably some low hanging fruit on the improvement side down there, the communication side.
I'm just looking at the table.
Which one?
For the lot.
The second sheet breaks
Yeah,
down,
I
the
think
top is Main Street parking, and then the bottom is.
Breaks up a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it really went down in December and January, but the other months
Pretty steady.
look pretty good. It's cold to walk that far in the winter.
Well, we just don't have as many bodies in the village in the winter, but during the prime months,
It was
it's used. What? Sorry?
abnormally warm fall season.
Yeah, I mean, look how the numbers jumped from September to October.
I think we might have changed enforcement at some point.
Oh, we're right. That's when we added another day. Right? When we added the Friday.
Well, that was earlier. That was much earlier.
So
But that wouldn't, well, it would have.
It
would
shouldn't.
have impact here, but not a huge impact. It'd be more on the ticket side, probably, right? I mean, you assume that if people are seeing enforcement, they're gonna pay, they're more likely to pay.
They're very visible, and that reminds them, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure that it was October, but you're right, Aaron, at some point we did shift days.
Yeah.
So other than parking, other sources of revenue, I guess, would there be a possibility for STRs permits?
Yeah.
To be in the budget?
That's the next step. The way we've laid out the work calendar for this year, it'd be late spring, early summer that we'd be getting to modification. The next steps on that are, I don't think I've told everyone that Phillipstown and Putt Valley worked together and hired another enforcement officer.
Okay.
So we'll get another half-time person. So when that person is on, Greg Warner and the supervisor and I are going to sit down and talk about capacity in the village, what that looks like with that change. But we also need to work out process for permitting, and Laura has been working with Abigail on technology side, and I think that you've identified options that are both less expensive and more functional than.
Yeah, we can present our findings when
you've got them.
Yeah, when I think we'll be ready when it's on the agenda.
Yeah. But I think for Michelle's asking about projections, so hopefully we can bring in numbers down a bit on the software side, and plan for sometime over the summer. Whatever quarter that.
But I think there's a lot of uncertainty about
I think you have a lot of
process,
uncertainty
right?
about it. Yeah.
I certainly
have
do.
uncertainty about it.
About the revenue, you're certain about how much revenue we would get?
I'm sorry.
Please share if you're certain. Yes.
No, I thought you meant about having the law passed, having the law updated.
No, that's not what I'm referring to. About absent the law, right?
Yeah.
And how much revenue this would bring in, how much this would affect, right? We've tried this before, and it did not. Nobody was happy with the with the outcome, right? And
Well,
so
we're not
improving it this time should be a lot better, but there's some basic information that we're not sure about. So
Well, I think we're in the process of getting that, but also we didn't have, when the village first adopted the law, we didn't have an occupancy tax. So there are lots of fronts to move forward on.
While talking about occupancy tax, budget year 25-26 will be the first full year of occupancy tax. In the current year, the projections were done at a 5% assumption for partial year. The law was passed at 4%. So there will be some increase because it's a full year, but not as high of an increase as we may have expected. Also, we've only had one quarter come in. Some of the amounts that came in, some were higher, some were lower than projections, kind of evened out. It's still really fresh to really have a good projection for 25-26. So I think we're going to have to be a little conservative again. But
the process did work. I think you and Greg did a really great job of launching that with. Greg did a great job launching it with the innkeepers. Seemed to be a manageable process for them, and yeah, it went well.
well. That's some insight into seasonality with the innkeepers.
Yes, for sure.
Grants, New York State funding, federal funding. We can take best guesses and firm that up as we get a little closer. The thought on, some of the federal funding, we've gotten some of it already. We'll look at what projects are open. If it's FEMA, it's 20% that the village, or 12.5% that the village would have to pay towards any of those projects. We have to figure out the New York State dormitory grant of what's left over for the next year, but that's a one-to-one revenue and expense would match. I don't know any other grants in the pipeline right now that we would have to account for.
There was just an announcement, I can't remember if it was DEC or EPA, for 80 million, it must be DEC, 80 million in new funds. There's a webinar on the training, or an informational webinar on the 12th of March. You've looked through it already?
I've looked through them. And we don't meet, there's only one, there are 3 grant opportunities, mostly from the environmental bond.
Yeah.
And there's one that maybe we're eligible for. And it's tied to the LWRP program. And
yeah,
it's, we have a substantially complete, so it's all about flooding. All of the grants are about flooding. Like, it's a long shot. I mean, I'll look into it, but
it also won't be this year. It would be the preparation of the grant this year. And then, yeah.
I mean, with all of these grants too, the problem is that they want pre-designed projects. And so we're stuck in this situation where we need the designs in order to be ready for when a grant pops up with a short turnaround time. And this is one that's like that. There's like the Green Infrastructure Grant Program is a big one through EFC, but same thing. So for flooding, but we need the planning. So hopefully we get this grant we applied for last summer. It could set us up with some of that. We're also meeting with DOT next week to look at like the pedestrian grant opportunities and understand that landscape.
You and Liza
and I. So we can bring that back.
I mean, anything that we can offset with grants, money we're not taking out of the general fund.
I mean, I would be super pessimistic about anything that's federal.
Yeah.
Right now. And some of the grants they look like they're state grants, but it's federal funds that are brought to the states, and then the states distribute they do the grant program to local. So, I think all that's really questionable up in the air.
And then the last revenue topic, would be docking. Typically, we've had, anywhere from 20, 30, 35,000 as part of the budget for docking. But in the past, the village board has also expressed thoughts on if that's going to continue. Want to get a feel if that's something that should be built into the budget.
James Barker reached out about, possibility of talking about summer and fall. Told him we needed to come current on what, the village first. So I think the last payment is on the way. I mean, I don't feel comfortable myself taking a position on docking until we see the whole picture and what our revenue looks like with parking, et cetera. I don't know how others feel about that, but I know that there are lots of concerns in the community about the impacts of C Street. And that's not nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. To me, it's like a very complicated relationship that we have with this.
Yeah.
With C Street or any company that would be wanting to do this with the amount of tourism that we have. And the impacts. And I feel like, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but I feel like each year it feels like it's gotten worse. But we are so very dependent on that revenue because we can't get it from other sources, and really the source that it should come from, which is the county. So we are this is a real pickle. Yeah, so really, and it's a pickle that we don't need to be in, except for the fact that we are.
If we were in a position where we had to do C Street docking, I want to be really conservative about the contract to try to reduce impact. But let's come back to it as we see what the revenue picture looks like.
On the general fund expense side, we've all had brief meetings, myself, a trustee, and a department head, to go over their budget requests. To summarize, the police department is requesting a patrol vehicle and new tasers to update ones they have currently. OIC Jackson will be sending forward a little narrative. We've asked the department heads to write a short narrative to really put on paper their thoughts and justification for why they're requesting these big ticket items. So,
Michelle, what's the ballpark thing in years? Do you have any idea? So I'm asking because it was I think there was like a police technology category in the congressional appropriations list, and I'm just wondering if it's like $5,000, it's not worth it, but if it's $100,000, it's worth it.
a quote from last year, which may or may not still be accurate. Two of the Axon 10s was 35,000 over a 5-year period.
$35,000
Total
total.
year or over the 5 years?
Over the 5-year period.
No, like 35 and then 35 and then 30.
No, for
35
like
total.
7,000.
Okay.
Everything in this day and age has moved to like licensing subscriptions.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the body cameras. The equipment is not the full cost. It's the annual storage and things like that.
I think what we have are hand-me-downs from the county, right? For the tasers?
No, the village paid for on a 5-year plan, the 2 tasers that the department is currently using. The village is no longer on that payment plan, so they are over 5 years old. I can't give an exact amount when we stop paying, but
Which means that they're not supported then, right?
my understanding too is that, they were a lower model. That's when we got them to begin with. They were not out of date when the village purchased them, but there was something already in the pipeline to be the next version of it. iPhones come out every year. A lot of equipment have things that come out year over year. And sometimes you can have savings by getting a year or two behind. But now we're well over 5 years behind in technology.
Did you see that on the Gillibrand list?
I'll pull it, sure.
Yeah. And that's got a March 31st application deadline, right? And you're right, we have not yet seen congressional, maybe because there's so much uncertainty there. We haven't seen, normally at this time of year, we get a request from our district representative, right, from Lawler. Maybe it's coming soon. I can follow up and ask. I haven't seen anything yet.
That'd be great.
Roadways and facilities, their large asks are for a full-time employee. Also, Bugsy wrote a narrative for that. I forwarded it. It's part of the packets for the trustees to read, his reasoning. He's also asking for a utility body pickup truck. He's asked for last year as well. That justification is also attached. For some reference, we have a Kenworth dump truck. It's currently financed. The last payment of that isn't until 27-28. So we still have 3 more payments to make. There has been some preliminary conversations. We have this NYSERDA grant that can pay for EV vehicles. Water and wastewater would consider a second EV pickup truck. And Bugsy could take a hand-me-down gas pickup truck with the utility body already installed with a plow. We just have to add a plow to it, and it would get that 4th smaller truck for plowing, which is one of the big justifications for another one. And verbally and preliminary, they're both in agreement with this, if that's something that the board would consider. We don't have to make a decision tonight. It's just an idea out there.
I actually appreciated that they were having that conversation and problem solving together. One of the concerns with the electric vehicles, however, is Lower Main Street, right? When Matt needs to go down there in a flooding circumstance with the stormwater, what are they called? The round things, the manholes. But
Wait, why is that an issue with
because
the?
you can't submerge the electric vehicle. But if we have multiple highway vehicles, you can drive to highway and trade vehicles. So that was reassuring to hear that. I had that worry. So the reason we've gotten the bigger police vehicles, so they can get down there when it floods.
Bugsy was, I talked to them about an EV truck for highway. But from my quite preliminary Googling, it looks like putting a plow on one. It looked like that was a challenge. And I couldn't find anything otherwise. So that's why this is an interesting.
I Googled that as well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have an actual plow frame made for it at the current moment. It's all if someone does it, they're trying it out. Yeah.
Well, the beauty is that Matt and his team love the new truck. Yeah. And they're very happy to use it.
We have $175,000 and actually some left over of the 100K, so something like $200,000. And we're looking for ways to spend it. So
It's rational.
and the truck is only something like 50 or 60. So we would have lots more. So also just putting in the one case where we have that we have money.
The pump we have from a member item. I saw the paperwork
Yes,
come
it
through.
is. Or that to everybody, we did have confirmation from the Department of State that Dana Levenberg's grant for the Cedar Street pump has come through. It's a $55,000 grant, so that's one big item we don't have to fund in the budget.
That's great.
I have paperwork came in I want to go through with you.
And just depending on where the paperwork lands and time frame, that may be in next year's budget, but it would be an equal expense and revenue.
But we could take it off the list of expenses.
So thank you, Councilmember Levenberg. Yeah.
Water and wastewater's large request is for an additional laborer. Matt has also wrote a narrative, not a short one, a long one that came in.
It's really helpful.
So I forwarded that's in here. That one came in late. And then overall staffing, performance reviews are happening now. Board should probably do an executive session to discuss if there should be any wage changes, and then figure out in the budget, what to add or not to add. Quickly. Almost there.
We're good. It has to be done.
For our working draft of the budget, I just want to make note, I put in a 2% cost of living, if that's okay with the board members, just to work and see where it is. Last year it was 3%. I didn't include anything for stipends or board members, which we can have a conversation about. I just did 2% on an hourly wage. 3% was where the board landed last year. It's 2% the year before, to build that in. CHIPS is a pot of reimbursable funds from the state. When I talk about CHIPS, there's 4 programs. It's CHIPS, PAVE, Winter Recovery, and PAVE our potholes. They're all mostly resurfacing, and some of them include subsurface.
Right. We've got about $100,000 coming up. We got in April, but we'll still have $450,000 to work on paving. So paving isn't something that has to stop. Keep that rolling forward. And you, Michelle, can you describe again what you determined about engineering expenses?
Engineering expenses alone are not eligible for CHIPS or any of these programs. However, if the village moves forward with a project that includes paving, oftentimes you can have a look back period for the engineering prep work to get you to that paving project. So if the engineers did any designs or hopefully the bid packet, any kind of prep work, you can go back and claim that as a reimbursable expense. CHIPS is designed to actually get pavement on the roads, so they don't want all the money spent in design work. Again, a design wall. But once you do the work, they said, okay, the design you need for the work, so we could pick it up. So some of the high engineering costs that we've seen this year, we can, other than the contractor, we can pull up some HON expenses and ask for reimbursement.
So like as an example, in this, the next 3 streets that are lined up for the school spring break, Will came in and consulted on Boulevard and Cedar Street for how to approach. So he wasn't drawing designs, but he was consulting and giving expertise, and that was by the hour. So something like that, we could go back and
Yep, and it's up to the DOT to say yes or no, but it is an eligible expense,
Okay.
and they encourage you to submit it. So say Will, while he was there, went and looked at Orchard Street, and Orchard Street doesn't get paved in the actual construction. If he spent an hour up on Orchard Street, they would disallow that hour up there if it's itemized in his bill because it didn't actually have paving or
It'd just be
construction.
reimbursable on the portions of his invoices that relate to the actual street.
I noticed that the Phillipstown Town Board, tomorrow, they have a resolution to purchase out of CHIPS an excavator. So but it's only like construction, like road construction related equipment. You couldn't use this for.
I believe the equipment has to have an 8 or 10 year minimum useful life. There are some pieces of equipment that are automatically eligible, and then you are allowed to request I guess like a pre-approval from CHIPS. The village did that for the trailer for the Bobcat. And CHIPS ended up paying for the trailer because it's used for, construction equipment that are used to maintain the roads. I believe there's one other smaller piece of equipment that CHIPS also paid for.
The thing that makes that more viable for the town is that they have a fleet.
Yeah.
and a fleet of bodies.
Yeah, it just was interesting. I was just
I didn't
thinking
know
of like
either.
the actual
Yeah.
road construction itself. Just wondering. Looking for creative solutions.
There's like, an 8-page CHIPS handbook that goes over, high level stuff.
So you can read it
If
before
you'd be
that.
interested.
Okay.
Side note on that, these amounts that are estimated are what the village was awarded last year. For the past few years, CHIPS has either stayed the same or gone up slightly. We won't know for sure until the state passes their budget. Hopefully April 1st, could be later. And then, it takes a couple weeks to get an actual update on the website for the apportionments if they change the formula.
And I feel like every year, it's a big hysteria, oh, we're gonna cut chips, and chips gets restored every time. Hopefully that'll be the case.
EWR and pave our potholes are always on the table, like, oh,
Yeah.
not renewing, and then they've been renewed. Until they're not. Some village-wide projects, I wish that we might have some numbers on some of these items, but I don't think we do. That's something that we should all work towards over the next week or two, if we can have estimates. We've talked about enclosing the generator building for wastewater. There's big stuff going on at Village Hall through the DASNY grant.
That we have, the wastewater generator building, we have a reasonable number on, which is about 30,000. It's not quite as simple as it first seemed, right? It looked like, oh, it just didn't get finished. But we did find drawings from the engineers who did it at the time. And the air circulation system that you need to have the generator run, the village couldn't afford the generator at the time, so they just left off the last wall. So it's open on one side and closed on three.
The ventilation.
But isn't
That's
that
the ventilation
problem?
system. That's the problem, because that's
So loud.
noisy. And also, the equipment in there is exposed. But because, another one of these feels impossible situations, because, we don't have the calculations that the engineers assumed, that the engineers used to assume flow on the circulation system. We are having a hard time finding an engineer who would sign off on working from the drawings we have. They would want to start from the beginning, because it's their license on the line. They'd want to start from the beginning, assessing airflows, et cetera. And that's what drives, what seemed like a small, we just need to close in the building project is a $30,000 project. So, it's something we need to do. Just the question is, when can we do it? The highway roof repairs, I need to ask Bugsy for an update, because the roof really does need to be replaced, but I know he's done some repairs and patching on the problematic parts this year. Find out, did he mention that when you guys met with him? Figure that out with him. And Village Hall improvements. We've got the DASNY, we need to update the DASNY numbers and see where we are. When you have drainage, culverts, road engineering, are you referring to things other than Fair Street?
Yes.
I mean, I think what we determined when we were working on our work list, and Will was advising us, seemed like what we could handle in this fiscal year is Fair Street, and in terms of not numbers, but even our capacity, is Fair Street and tunnel, and engineering for Mountain Fishkill. But he didn't foresee us having capacity to take on more than that. Fair Street is just gonna be such a big thing.
So that's for FY, fiscal year 25-26, the budget we're talking about, right? Not through May 31st. This is stuff for next year,
And I'll
yeah.
double check, I have the right plan here.
Question related and unrelated, but about the tunnel. The windows and such, those are all under our maintenance purview, correct?
The whole building is our responsibility. Is there a broken window?
Yes. On the other side, we go up toward going on
The lower main?
yeah. Sometimes I've been told that the windows are out.
Oh, and no one's noticed. So we'll have patrol car go by tonight and look, make sure there's not glass, et cetera.
There, I see it. It's one pane. It's on just the pedestrian side, like when you go out, you're kind of like walking around.
Oh,
The
on the
building?
north side of the building? On
On the
street side?
east, like away, like, well, no, you're on the lower village side. Or like next to the kayak stop.
Yeah.
Like that side.
The west side.
Yeah, and like where pedestrians walk. But I think it's one pane and there's glass in the ground. Sorry, it's like I see it at 6 in the morning.
Yes, I understand. So Fishkill and Mountain, the engineering can get started in the summer, and the construction would begin likely in the spring of 2026. So it's the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, so we can reconnect to Will on that. If you think about what we use as a placeholder number for that, I mean, both for engineering and then for possible bid. The other thing we have engineering happening on now is the water plant pump station upgrades. But also not likely to happen on the construction side until 25 or 26.
All three pump stations or one specifically?
I'm sorry, I'm saying the wrong thing. The pump station at the water treatment plant.
Okay,
The
yeah,
one-
the aqueduct.
The aqueduct connection and the drawdown from the Fishkill. I'm sorry, the Foundry Pond reservoir.
Okay.
And I know Doug, Han, and Matt have been working on that. I don't know what the status of it is, though.
For FEMA, like I mentioned before, some of the money has been received. We have to spend it within 3 years of receipt to do the capital project. Rough estimate from the consultant, Chris. I asked Chris and he said 3 years. So if any of that work's gonna be done in the near future, I mean, the visitor center was already done. We just have to pick up 12.5%
Yeah.
and figure that into the budget.
So all of this federal level chaos is being felt at the local level. And I had a weekly meeting with FEMA for a really long time. And our FEMA rep has fallen off the face of the earth. So I'm having communications with dishes, our path through New York State, but it seems like it's just really chaotic within FEMA. The money from that storm is obligated at the high level. We need to bring it down to us. I don't think that money is going to go away, but the staffing cuts that are happening are impacting everything downstream.
The plus side, some of the lower hanging fruit items have already been sent to the village funding. The sewer plant fence has been received, the visitor center has been received. And there was one other item that was received. It's not all up in the air, at least some of it has come.
Yeah, the big outstanding item is Fair Street.
So while we're talking about Fair Street, if the FEMA Federal Highway doesn't work out funding source, the estimated project there is 1.5 million. We'll talk about a bond there. For this project, we could borrow in a band for the first 5 years of the project. You know, so if construction is done in phases, you're not borrowing at all, or it gives us time to go to market. But unlike the bands that we have in water and wastewater, it's a hard 5 years. It has to go to a bond or pay off the band. It's true short-term financing. The flip side is that if the village was to borrow, we could make an interest-only payment in the first year. Still expensive, but not as expensive as a full principal and interest payment would be.
That would buy us time toward reimbursement or progress toward reimbursement. It's not,
It's also kicking the bucket.
no, it's totally kicking the bucket. I mean, that's not, I'm not saying we do that,
No, no.
but it's, Michelle's identifying it as an option.
Yeah,
That project really can't be phased. Because everything is so interconnected down there, and to try to I've had a look at it, and to break it up and try to phase it will make it more expensive. And it's also gonna be, you know, disturbance of that very important public way for longer than we want.
In talking about terms of numbers, I did this calculation, didn't come from financial advisor, so it could be off, but I used his spreadsheet. He did the dam at 6 million for 30 years. I changed it to 1.5 for 30 years, same rate. And that would be principal and interest, approximately 95,000 every year for 30 years. An interest-only payment for 12 months at the same rate would be 71,000. And then you're paying interest on the whole thing at once. Whereas if you are bonding, you are amortizing the interest over the years. The benefit to not being ready in May with our regular band, we've talked about doing 2 bands in 1 fiscal year. Our regular May one, and then perhaps maybe one in August when we have firm numbers. So May of 25, August of 25. Then when we get to May of 27, we combine them. So we're on a 1-year cycle again. The small benefit to doing that, there's a little bit upfront cost for bond counsel. We'd pay less interest. So the less amount of time you have on that band, the less interest you're paying for the 8 months versus full 12 months.
Right, you don't want to borrow until you really need the money, so you're not, yeah. Correct.
Are we still talking about if we don't get the FEMA funding? That's the zero.
If the village paid the full 1.5 estimate from the engineers, 95,000 a year, 30 years, roughly.
I feel cautiously optimistic that there will be FEMA funding. Just what it will look like is the unknown.
This is new to the general fund. The general fund has never leveraged debt before. It's never had a bond payment, a band payment. Since I've been here, I can't speak to 15, 20, 30 years ago.
They run the water side and the wastewater side.
Recently, at least in the past 9, 10 years, I haven't seen one. So this is something that would need to be fit into the budget. It's a brand new payment. Anytime we add a brand new expense, it's always hard because the budget's already balanced from the year before, and now we're adding in a big payment. I think we have to have conversations about what that payment looks like in the first year, if it is an interest only. Is it on the full 1.5? If FEMA's going to come in a little bit, is it only on $1 million? We have to make a determination, and that's going to be the biggest ticket, I think, in the general fund expense because it's brand new. The last 2 pieces are just a summary of the band that we have now. It's 1 band with 3 components. The components go by a bond resolution, which is when the board authorizes the issuance of debt. So there was 3 separate bond resolutions, but we consolidated into 1 band. And then the bonds, there are 2 bonds. A little bit of good news on the wastewater side. One of the older bonds is the last payment is next year. So that is a 35,000 principal payment plus interest that will go away after next year.
Finally, some good news, Michelle. Thank
I
you.
know, right? Exactly. I was thinking the same thing.
Well, I thought the news from Dana was good. We don't have a 0% growth. That's good on the tax cap. A lot of good.
Be fine. It's gonna be fine. It will be fine. We'll figure it out. All right.
Any overall questions, comments? No concerns.
I mean, it's just, we're gonna have to work our tails off.
Why do we request adding an item? I probably should have done, okay, so then I'm gonna say now. We have a very popular food scrap collection site in the village that's part of the town's program. For this year, it's paid for by grant, but after that, the grant goes away. And I think we should keep it. It's cheaper for us to do it as part of the town, but I think we pay $250 a month. I think that's what we pay. So it would be, and I think it's so popular.
Is this $35,000?
No, it would be something like $5,000. So I would like us to consider. Well, okay, so my full pitch is that it is so popular that I think we should expand it to another bin. And our current plastic bin is falling apart. So I think that we could do some kind of community build project to make a new wooden bin, but we probably have to supply some of the materials. I think Phillipstown could pitch in some of it, but then they're also going to increase the weekly fee if we have another bin. So that's why I was thinking it would be something like 5,000. Like 3 bins in one container, you know, at that site. Something like that.
Something else to throw
So
out.
it's small, but I want to.
Well, I think people love it, and I'd love to support your request. We did get contacted by, the county has finally hired a full-time waste management recycling person. We're like the only county around here that doesn't have a proper solid waste management program, shockingly, all that money kicking around. But they have hired a full-time person. She has asked to meet with us. And I think that that's something, maybe we pitch there too and see what we can come up with.
Do we expect the car chargers to make any sort of revenue worth noting?
Yeah, so we get to set the price, and we could set it for visitors to be at a profit, I think, and then we could set it for residents just to cover costs. I don't have any sense of how much that would bring in. Maybe it would cover the food scrap bin. That would be a great goal.
Wait,
but I don't
understanding the question.
So
Carts.
So we can set the EV charger rate to be higher than our own cost of electricity. All the other costs for the chargers will be paid for by the grant. Like we're gonna pay ahead of time for the subscription. I think it's 4 years, because that's what the grant requires.
Aaron, do you know what it costs at the town? You use that charger, right?
I've used it infrequently. I mean, my house charger melted 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, but it melted. So I had to use the town. So it doesn't happen very often. I'll just let the public know. I don't remember exactly. I can look it up. It's it was like $13 for me to fully charge the car over one night. So
Martha, the Climate Smart coordinator for the town, has been tracking and could tell us the amount, but I don't know if it's enough to, especially in the first year, to assume anything in the budget, honestly. Also given our situation, how long it takes to be installed.
And does Phillipstown have that variable rate that Aaron was talking about, or is that just an idea?
I guess they do it per hour, which kind of surprises me. I think it's more difficult to do it by like kilowatt use, but they do it by hour. And then they also have new chargers at the rec center.
I think we should set our rates at 5 cents lower than Phillipstown, or all those cars will come down to us.
I like it. I like the thinking. But I mean, what you described, what I thought you were describing was.
So the residents.
Yeah, basically.
Like,
I don't, yeah, setting it lower
Yeah.
for residents, I don't think they do that.
But we might have the capacity.
I would like to do that, and the technology allows it.
Okay.
So maybe there's opportunity to sell like another membership or something to residents that want to use the thing.
Or we could just let them, so.
Or that, either way.
Okay, anything else from you, Michelle? I just thought of something to potentially throw in, having no basis in any kind of number, is that there were items in the NIMTIC proposal that were low hanging, that could make improvements, in the short term. And I'd like to, I know you and Eliza are looking at it. I'd like to, if there's anything that we can figure out, I mean, I'm interested in wayfinding.
Yeah.
As low hanging fruit to make movement around the village easier, so signage. And the other thing I was thinking about is looking at, getting on the street in those locations where they recommended striping and seeing what the access is. Some of the things we're gonna have to do new sidewalks with ramps to get access to a crosswalk, but are there any where we can augment the crosswalks with paint and have it help? And the other thing that we talked about is to be able to try, which we are not allowed to do on the state road, but we could do on village roads, is the pedestrian signs that go in the middle of the road. If they get hit, they bounce over and come back. To set them in the crosswalks down Main Street during the busy season on the weekends as a visual reminder for people to slow down and watch for. We priced them like a year ago. I can't remember what it was, but I'd like to look at that again.
Didn't Buzzy talk about, light up signage?
Crosswalks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so we've been in touch with DOT on that. Fishkill was able to put them in as part of their Main Street grant. They had a Main Street upgrade grant like we did a few years ago. So it's a conversation. We need permits to do it from DOT. The initial conversation with them was, oh, we'll give you a permit, you can put them in, of course. But we have some grant opportunities to explore as part of this pedestrian safety program to see if we can do it.
Okay.
We need to get good numbers on it.
Bugsy said he's looking at numbers, he told me about it,
I don't know that because he's been working on, I don't know if he got there, but yeah, he's also been in contact with DOT. He's very eager, particularly around, with the school, and it is something we're gonna have to deal with. We're gonna have to deal with eventually anyway. It's really hard to fill those crossing guard positions because the hours are so wacky. Like somebody who's available from 7:15 to 8:45, and then from 10 to 11 for high school lunch, and then again from 2 to 3:15 when school lets out. It's not exactly a job people are clamoring to get. And at some point, it's hard to get across that road at all times of day. At Academy in Maine, at Locust Ridge in Maine, and at 9D in Craigside. So at some point, I think it makes sense for us to look at those pedestrian activated lights. It concerns, I don't know one thing I think about is what's it like for the house that's at that intersection, with the flashing light. But it's, since the houses are close to the road. Just thinking about conversations that will arise.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, fair enough. I just think that what's it gonna look like when a kid gets struck by a car? I think that's a way worse look than a flashing light that goes off every so often.
I think it's something we're gonna have to work through.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with this. We need something. We need something different.
We need something, for sure.
And it sort of makes me.
I mean, I've seen people almost not care that there's a human standing with a stop sign in the street.
For sure.
And beep at people stopping while people are.
I mean, today we had a cop. We are down one crossing guard right now. So the afternoon patrol officer goes to the school, to Locust Ridge in Maine, and I was on my street today and watched a car come at a uniformed police officer with flashing lights and the officer going like this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We also talked about piloting removable speed bumps. Another traffic thing, and they're not very expensive. I mean, I think all of these we'll brainstorm in a session to talk about, but if you're looking for numbers, you can try to put numbers on these ideas.
So I think, so next week we'll have a draft of the general fund budget, may or may not be balanced, probably won't be balanced, so that we could talk through it. And then, finish that up on the 19th, to balance it in time for the 20th, and do water and wastewater also on the 19th. Good.
If there's nothing else, I would make a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, Aaron. Happy
Good
travels.
night. Thank you.
Thanks for sticking it out.
Yeah.